Okay, good evening, everyone. As I just mentioned, well, I didn't mention this, but I am Eric Ludwig. I am the director of the EdD program here at Florida State University in the Department of Ed Leadership and Policy Studies. And I am joined by my wonderful colleague, Dr. Brittany Claussen Pitts. Dr. Claussen Pitts is our student advising coordinator. She's a graduate of our PhD program here in ELPS, and she sort of is the support person along the way, does amazing work with this program with our students. So if you have any questions after the session, you can always contact me directly or Dr. Claussen Pitts. As a note, you can call me Dr. Ludwig, you can call me Eric, you can call me Dr. L, Dr. Eric, which some of our students have taken to. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm glad to see so many of you here. As I mentioned right when we got started, if you have questions, you can raise your hand, you can unmute your mic, you can drop them in the chat, whatever works for you. Just ask that you stay muted kind of while we're talking so we don't get any feedback or anything like that into the recording. I am recording this session, so if you miss anything or you have to drop off early or you'd like to share with other people, we'll be posting this up on YouTube to the college's YouTube channel. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and get started. And I'm going to start, as we do with a lot of meetings, with our land acknowledgement here in ELPS. This is something we crafted as part of our focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion and social justice over the last couple of years. And it states, we within the Department of Educational Leadership and Policy Studies at Florida State University acknowledge that our university is located on the indigenous lands of the Appalachian Nation, the Muskogee Creek Nation, the Miccosukee Tribe of Florida, and the Seminole Tribe of Florida. We highlight and pay respect to this history because we understand how the state of Florida and Florida State University came to be settled on these lands. We recognize this land as scarred with a painful past of enslavement, settler colonial violence, the desolation of culture, and the forced removal of indigenous bodies. Despite this, we respect the cultural and ceremonial practices these indigenous nations maintain in and around Tallahassee today. As educators, we honor the knowledge of these tribes and their people and acknowledge that indigenous students, faculty, and administrators are vital to Florida State University. We embrace the decolonization of our educational system and commit to disrupting suppressive systems through the explorations of many truths and lived experiences and creating room for those who are often excluded by harmful colonial erasures in our practice and pedagogy. Okay. So, I already introduced Dr. Claussen Pitts. Deb Ham-Kelly, you might have interacted with Deb or communicated with her via email if you are in the process of applying or have thought about applying. Deb is amazing. This program would not run if it weren't for Deb. So she's incredible. We also have two GAs who are great in their respective roles. Dinar Ibraheva, who is a first-year PhD student, and then Xiaojuan Li, who is a PhD candidate in international multicultural education. And as I mentioned, I'm Eric Ludwig. Okay, so first off, we'll get to sort of program-specific things, but I want to talk about admissions first. Our admissions deadline for this coming cycle is February 1st, so about 8 weeks or so from now. And as part of the admissions process, you would submit the following materials: a copy of your CV or your resume, a statement of purpose that's typically about 1,000 words-ish or so. We ask you to sort of outline why you're interested in pursuing a doctoral degree right now, and then also to highlight a potential area of research or interest that you might be sort of interested in exploring during your time in the program. You can submit GRE scores. Alternatively, you may qualify for a GRE waiver, and there's two primary conditions under which you might qualify for a waiver. The first is if you have a graduate GPA of 3.75 or higher, or if you have 10 years or more of experience as an educational practitioner or working in an educational setting, of 5 of which must be in a leadership or supervisory role. 3 letters of reference. I get this question a lot with regards to letters of reference. They do not have to be exclusively academic letters of reference. So for someone that taught you or advised you in a graduate program, what we want to see in letters of reference is someone who can speak to your experience and skill as a practitioner, your capacity to potentially pursue doctoral coursework and a doctoral degree, and speak to other skills and abilities that you have that might make this program at this time a good fit for you. Okay, and then the last thing is to include academic transcripts. Okay. I'm not going to get into program cost at this time, but I will note that if you have questions about costs, whether it's resident in-state tuition costs or out-of-state costs, FSU Student Business Services has all the posted tuition rates by program and by location. Tuition rates in Florida are set by the Florida legislature, and the current resident tuition rate for online graduate programs is $444.26 per credit hour. And Brittany, since I don't have it up, if you could just kind of monitor the chat as well. Thanks. All right, so let's talk about the EdD program itself. So the EdD program in Leadership and Policy is a 69 credit hour degree program. Of those 69 credits, 45 of those are core, what I would call core program coursework, and then 24 of those credit hours are dissertation hours, right? That is, in your final year of coursework, you complete 24 dissertation hours, which are sort of a requirement of the graduate school to complete a doctoral degree. Okay, so there are 3 major milestones in the program. The first is a diagnostic exam, which you take in your second semester in the fall. And that is sort of a mini proposal for your dissertation research. And that is something you work on in the summer in your coursework and then also in the fall prior to its submission. The second is a preliminary exam that you take during your the end of your second year in the spring, and that is a full draft of chapters 1 through 3 of your dissertation and practice, and we'll talk a little bit more about the dissertation and practice here briefly. So it's sort of a extended or full proposal for your dissertation research. And then the final thing is your dissertation itself, which you submit completed dissertation, a 4-chapter dissertation in practice at the end of your 3rd year. Okay, and I'm gonna pause there if there's any questions about. Well, actually, let me say first about the dissertation in practice. So, as I mentioned, the dissertation in practice is a 4-chapter dissertation, and it's comprised of applied research that our students conduct as practitioners, primarily in the field, right? So what we ask students very early on in the program is to identify a problem, or what I might also call a possibility, in the local context or setting in which they work as a practitioner, and then to tie that problem or possibility to a broader issue within educational policy or research that has been sort of explored in the empirical research, right? Sometimes students conduct research that's sort of not is relatively under-researched, But what we ask you to do is think about a problem that you're experiencing as a practitioner, right? That is of interest to you, and then to think about research that you would design around that and connecting that to broader issues or problems in educational policy and practice. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit more about the structure of writing that dissertation, but it is, again, a 4-chapter dissertation that you sort of build over the course of your 3-year program. Okay. Any question? Well, I'll hold there for questions. So we'll talk about coursework and then the structure of the coursework with regards to the sort of development of the dissertation and then ultimately its completion. So what I think is unique about our program, and I don't know if unique is necessarily the right word. I know no other EdD programs have sort of went this direction. But the first 3 chapters of your dissertation, you write really through the structure of coursework. So we like to call these embedded assignments, but really all that means is that, so for chapter 1, which you're working on during your first 2-3 semesters in the program, right, you are working on that within coursework, meaning that you have activities and assignments that help you develop your ideas and turn that into a draft of chapter 1. And the same goes ultimately for chapters 2 and 3 of the dissertation. That is sort of the ideation process, the development process, and the writing process occur largely within coursework. And so you can see here kind of the layout and the terms in which that happens. During your first summer, you start really working on your ideas, fleshing them out around your what we like to call your problem of practice, and then you continue that through the fall, during which you take your diagnostic exam. Okay. And then after your diagnostic exam, into your first spring, and then into your second year, you start working on drafts of chapter 2 of your dissertation, which is primarily your literature review and background analysis. And then into the spring, you start working on chapter 3, right, which is your methods chapter and your analysis plan, right? What we call also like your investigative approach. Okay, so you can see here the overall layout of coursework. And this is actually for our incoming cohort, cohort 8. We've made some minor modifications to the curriculum. So historically, students have taken 3 courses or 9 credits in their first and second summer. We've had, however, from a lot of feedback from students, and we've made some modifications there. I'm gonna mute someone. We've made some modifications there so that now during your first and second summers, you'll only have 6 credits of coursework or 2 classes. To offset that, there will be 2 other terms during the program in which you'll take 9 credits. That will be in your first spring, so spring 2024, that would be, and in your second fall, so fall 2024. But during the summer now, you only have 6 credit hours. Okay, so you can see here individual courses within the program, right? We have methods focused courses, which you'll take during the first year, which includes applied research methods, qualitative research and evaluation methods, as well as applied quantitative methods. Into your second year, we kind of focus on policy. So looking at data use and data-driven decision-making in education. Then depending on whether your focus is primarily K-12 education or higher education, in fall 2, you'll take 2 policy and sort of a policy focused course, and then an organization or administration focused course. All right, and then in your final spring of coursework, you will take a course in which you that is largely preparation for your preliminary exam, and then you will have an elective course. And that elective course, students often take an additional methods elective to help them prepare for their dissertation and practice, okay? I believe I have those somewhere, Carla. I can dig those up. So then after your second spring, you've passed your preliminary exam, and then you move into your final year of the program, which is largely, you can think of it as someone as an independent study, right? You'll be assigned a dissertation advisor, which actually occurs a little bit earlier in the program. And then you are working during that final year with your dissertation advisor, and you are in the field collecting data, analyzing your data, and writing up findings, which will ultimately become chapter 4 of your dissertation. Okay, so the dissertation hours are not like formal coursework, but it is sort of a requirement of the graduate school that you're enrolled in dissertation hours to maintain continuous enrollment. So your final year is you'll take one final elective in your third summer, but then after that, the fall and the spring term are really focused on completing your dissertation, completing your research. Okay. Wrong way. Okay, and you can see here generally how advising works. So within the program, we start during your diagnostic exam. You have an advising team who reviews your diagnostic exam. And then you have for your dissertation, starting with your preliminary exam at the end of your second year, and then into your dissertation defense in your third and final year, you'll have a full dissertation committee, which includes 3 representatives from our department at Leadership and Policy Studies, as well as an external university representative from outside of our department. Maybe someone in the College of Education, could be someone in communications or business, but it is another sort of tenured faculty member here at the university. Okay, and before I get to that, I want to come back here and make another note. So this program coursework is asynchronous, sort of meaning that there are no live synchronous requirements in the program outside of your individual defenses for those program milestones that we just talked about. So your diagnostic exam, your preliminary exam, and your dissertation defense each have a synchronous virtual defense that does not require you to come here to Tallahassee. That will be done via Zoom. Other than that, all of the coursework itself is completed asynchronously. It is not self-paced, however, right? Our courses follow a traditional 15-week term in the fall and the spring and 12-week term in the summer. But it is asynchronous in that there's not a time you need to log on at X hour of X date. Many of our instructors do hold, myself included, hold optional or supplemental synchronous sessions. So I teach methods courses often, and I will hold lectures on Thursday evenings, for example, and students come if they can. If they're unable to come, I typically record those sessions and then make those available to the group. Okay. All right, before we get to advising, are there any questions either about the structure of coursework, course sequencing, program milestones, that sort of thing? Okay. So from an advising perspective, and I think this is sort of one of the strengths of our program, as I introduced Dr. Claussen Pitts, but Dr. Claussen Pitts and I sort of are your primary, along with your course instructors, are your primary advising contacts during really your first year and a half of the program. And then really when you slide into your second fall in the program, at that point, you start to work more closely with your, what we call your major professor, your dissertation advisor. I'm certainly still here, and I work with students into their third year as needed. I have my own advisees, but really we try to transition from your second year into that sort of advising relationship with your major professor. So what does this look like in practice for your first year? So as I mentioned, our admissions deadline is March 1st. Excuse me, our admissions deadline is February 1st. And we typically release admissions decisions by March 1st. So my goal and anticipation would be that if you were to reply, you would have notification of your acceptance to the program by around March 1st. In April, we will hold some virtual orientation sessions, likely 2 of them, one in early April and one in mid to late April. And all of those details would be in an acceptance letter to you. And then summer term this year starts May 15th. And that's actually a week later than typically. And then from June 20th to 22nd, here in Tallahassee, we will be holding our annual Summer Institute. And we expect students to attend. I go shy of saying this is a requirement because you all have busy lives and you have work and professional responsibilities, you have personal responsibilities and obligations. But I will say that last year we held this for the first time since 2019, first time after COVID. And we had over 100 of our EdD students here. And I think they individually and collectively were very positive about the experience. It's a great opportunity for you to meet our faculty, for you to meet your cohort peers, and to see the campus. And we have a lot of socialization activities. We have a keynote speaker and that sort of stuff. So that will be from June 20th to 22nd here in Tallahassee. Summer classes end August 4th, and then a fall semester will begin August 28th. You can see the rest of this here, kind of when diagnostic exams will occur and that sort of stuff. Okay. So this is sort of something I put together for our new students last spring, but you can kind of see here what our expectations are. And really, students who are successful in this program, I think, learn quickly how to sort of manage their time and develop a routine. I think we provide a wonderful amount of support to our students. We have all kinds of sort of supplemental support opportunities, whether it's sort of individual meetings with program faculty, myself, with Dr. Claussen Pitts, writing support groups, mentoring groups. We have a student leadership and planning committee. Our students are involved in a number of things. And within cohorts themselves, our cohorts, I would say, are very close. It's one of the strengths of the program, in my opinion. And I think there's a lot of sort of peer support in addition to departmental support. And I think this is evidenced by the fact that we have students, the vast majority of our students complete their degree in 3 years. The program is really designed for you to start and finish within 3 years. And over 80% of our students who start the program and complete their first summer will graduate within 3 years. And that other 15 to 20% typically will take an extra semester or two, but over 90% of our students who complete their first summer will graduate. Okay. So I am going to leave it there. That was a very 35,000-foot overview of the program and what we do. We have students, and I should have pulled this up, but and maybe I can. Brittany, do you have access to that? But you know what? I can pull it up. Hang tight, everyone. Just talk a little bit about who our students are. As I mentioned, we have about 112 active doctoral students right now, spread primarily across 3 cohorts. Our cohorts are roughly 35 to 40 students in size. Let me stop sharing and then share this. Caitlin, I see your message. The program is 69 total credit hours. 45 of those are coursework that you complete in the first 2 years. The final 24 hours are dissertation credit hours that you complete in your final year. Okay, let me share this. So as I mentioned, we have about 112, I believe, students who are, this says 119, that it actually includes students who are in, who are in our 4th cohort, I believe, and our 3rd cohort who were a little bit, didn't graduate exactly in 3 years. So we have 112 or so active students, our students who are in cohorts 5, 6, and 7, which I would call our active cohorts. And then we have a handful of students in cohorts 3 and 4 who are finishing up. We actually have 3 graduating tomorrow with our cohort 4 students, the bulk of whom graduated in the spring. About 80% of our students, maybe higher than that actually, 85-ish, are Florida residents. And then we have a relatively even split between higher ed and K-12. This really breaks down. This is from, I believe, this breakdown is from our cohort 7 students. Across all students, it tends to be about 50-50, K-12 practitioners and higher ed practitioners. I see the question about cost of the program, and I'll get to that in just briefly. I'd say, 2/3-ish or so of our students focus their dissertation research on topics that I would say are directly or explicitly related to equity, racial equity, social justice focused. 44% of our students identify as students of color. 71% of our students identify as women. And across the state, we have representation from 38 school districts and 38 colleges and universities. So it's really sort of both professionally, but also demographically very diverse. We have students who are veteran school teachers, been teaching for years and years. We have students who are K-12 assistant principals, directors of curriculum and instruction, assistant superintendents. We have on the higher ed side, we have faculty at 2-year colleges and universities in the Florida college system. We have deans, directors, executive directors, all the way up to vice presidents for advancement, enrollment management, and student affairs. Thank you, Brittany. The total cost of the program, my back of the napkin math, I think puts it between 30 and 35,000 over the full 3 years. Again, the tuition rates are all set by the Florida legislature. We don't handle billing directly here in our department. That's all done centrally at FSU, and is based on the published tuition rate set by the legislature. So again, as I said, there's 69 credit hours, and I think the graduate credit hour cost for online programs is $444. There are some fees that are associated with dissertation hours that you can see more in the handbook. But I think the full length cost last time I did the math was about $33,000. Obviously, that's different for students who are not in-state residents in the state of Florida. And then I know many employers across the state, whether you're a state employee, Florida, the university system employee, or working on the K-12 side, many districts have tuition reimbursement or tuition waiver policies that might be applicable. Okay, so that's kind of who our students are as well. And you can see here we have some student highlights. I actually think Dr. Hatcher might be on this call right now. I see a Chris Hatcher there, and I would guess that's Dr. Hatcher. Dr. Hatcher is a graduate of our Cohort 4, and then we have a couple of our other students from Cohort 6 and Cohort 5. And the cohort we will be admitting this coming spring will be Cohort 8. As I mentioned, they start in May of 2023. You can see some of our faculty here as well. Just a wonderful group of folks in our department. We have, I believe, 24 or 25 faculty in Ed Leadership and Policy Studies, and they have a variety of sort of research interests and areas of expertise. And I think that is about all I've got. For additional sort of information, Aline, I see your question, and I'll get to that in just a sec. Application requirements you can find at this website, education.fsu.edu/ELP-EDD. And what else was I going to say? There's one other thing. So there's information there on GRE waiver. You can also find the program handbook and other sort of programmatic information there. Aline, it varies really quite widely year to year. We have anywhere from, 70 to 80 to 100 and something people who start applications, and how many people finish those varies actually quite widely year to year as well. I will say that, yes, we do evaluate applications holistically, and that's sort of a term that's used quite often. But when I say that, what I mean is, if you, for example, submit a GRE score, right? Your GRE score is one piece of your application, right? It's not determinative of your of a decision, right? We look at, as I said, we look at your professional experience and your experience as a practitioner. We read very closely your statement of purpose, and really trying to get a sense for why are you pursuing this opportunity, this degree now. And then also to sort of feel out your potential research interests, right? And think about, what does that look like, and how can we support that? We look at letters of reference, obviously, and then those are probably the primary things we use to make our decision. But we review these as an executive committee. We review the applications, and so Aline, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay,
No,
you bet. And then you can see here on this this picture, beautiful picture from our Summer Institute last summer. And this was all of our students, well, the vast majority of them, I know 10 or 15 of them couldn't make it, but from cohorts 5, 6, and 7 here in Tallahassee. And as I mentioned, it's just a wonderful group of people who I learn from every day, who are sort of embedded in the work of being practitioners in schools and colleges and universities across the state of Florida and beyond. And so I'm very, very privileged and lucky to get to do this for my daily job. I will open it up again for questions. You can either type into the chat or unmute your mic or whatever you feel comfortable with.
Thanks, Dr. Ludwig. Just to double check and confirm, it's not admissions, right? We usually will find out those admission decisions by March 1st, correct?
Correct. Yes. Thank you, Ivo. Yes, we will. We wait until the February 1st deadline to review applications. We typically turn those around very quickly. My goal, as I said, is to have decisions out to everyone by March 1st. I know some of you may be applying to multiple programs. You may be waiting for admissions decisions from one place, and as you're kind of thinking about where you want to go. So we try to turn those around pretty quickly, but we do not do rolling admissions. That's correct. Other questions, comments?
I have a question.
Sure.
So, my question is, as someone who is like interested in applying and stuff, well, like not now, in the future and stuff, but if you have like a research topic that you're interested in, and is it okay to like, go to you guys about it for like, even though you're not in it, but it's just like, just kind of having a guidance in a way to know like, what you want? Because I think when I was looking at the application requirements, one of them was like to submit like a research topic you're interested in, something along those lines, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I take Aline, and this goes for everyone in the meeting. I'm gonna post my oops, I'm chatting into the waiting room. Sorry, everyone. I've posted a link to my Calendly. And I believe Brittany might have posted hers earlier. If she didn't, you can certainly, Aline, you can always email me, and I meet with prospective students pretty regularly to talk through, like, if they have things that they're interested in, or talk through, what might be something that you would be interested in researching. I know Dr. Claussen Pitts would be more than willing to do that as well. So I mean, it's tough for me right now because we have grades due on Tuesday, and we're all kind of mired in that right now. But I'm more than willing to meet with you or with anyone when I have availability on my calendar. So so you can click on that link and you can see when I'm available, and you can set up a 15 or 30-minute meeting, and we can meet virtually, and I'm more than happy to talk through what your interests are and help you think about how how you might sort of communicate that. Hi, Mindy, I see your question. We have historically, as I mentioned, had 9 credits in the summer. And we've tried to, we have people who are school teachers. We also have many administrators and a lot of folks working in higher ed, and sort of the joint feedback we've gotten, I would say predominantly the feedback we've gotten is that a lot of people felt overwhelmed in the summer taking 9 credits. Mainly, in some cases, even our K-12 educators who came off the end of a school year and were ready for maybe some sort of a break or sort of a little bit of recovery, and then the summers were quite heavy. Also, one of the primary reasons we've shifted to 6 credits in the first summer is to sort of help with that acclimation to doctoral level coursework, and to sort of getting new cohort up to speed, right? And sort of familiar with the program and what the expectations are, and how to manage your time and your writing and your work and all those sorts of things. So, so the 9 credits would only occur twice in the program, and that would be in the spring at the end of your first year, and then in the fall at the beginning of your second year, in the middle of your second year. Okay, other questions?
Dr. Ludwig, I have a question. My name's Heather Dietzold.
Hi,
Thank you so
Heather.
much. Hey, thanks so much for this presentation tonight. It's been
Sure.
wonderful. Quick question in regards to kind of the format of the courses. I saw that you guys are utilizing Canvas, but
Yes.
is there a lot of opportunity for interaction between fellow cohort members throughout, the stretch of each course?
Yeah, that's a great question, Heather. So for example, this fall, I teach two classes in the fall. I teach a research methods class, and I teach another class that's really focused on program evaluation. In both of those classes, students do so they group projects. And I would not say that the program itself is very like group or collaboration heavy. There are certain programs in the courses that are, but there are opportunities throughout the program for collaboration, both within the structure of coursework and outside of coursework. I would say that, and I can't speak for all of our students in the program, but I certainly feel that both my own perception, but also in feedback that I've had from students over the last 3 years, is that students feel a very strong sense of community within their cohort. Cohorts typically have like a group chat. They use like Slack or GroupMe or WhatsApp or something like that as a group. They communicate regularly. I know that many of them meet outside of coursework. So I think that there's sort of like a very strong bond that develops within cohorts. And then within coursework, yeah, there's certainly opportunity for collaboration in multiple classes throughout the program. But I'm very cognizant of the way that I structure that sort of collaborative activity, so that it's not doesn't feel like busy work, right? Collaboration for the sake of collaboration, but typically trying to tie that to some sort of assessment or sort of learning goal or objective that you're trying to accomplish throughout the term. Does that answer your question, Heather?
It does. And
Okay.
I actually have a follow-up to it too.
Sure.
So as most of us being, practitioners working, I guess what have you found, or do you have kind of a general idea of how much time per week that students are spending on their classes?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's heavily course dependent. I mean, I would say that if you're taking 6 credits, I think that you're probably ballparking 10 to 15 hours a week. Maybe, but maybe other weeks it's 6 to 8, right? Like I think this is a tricky question because obviously certain students, some students do things quicker than others, and others need more time for reading or for writing. So I also think that there are lulls in the program, and then there are also periods of the program which are highly work intensive. And so I think it really just depends also where you're at in the structure of that program. I tell students that their second spring is probably like the most difficult, or say stressful, but it's the most sort of work intensive part of the program, right? Because they are preparing for the preliminary exam, they're revising chapters 1 and 2 of their dissertation, they're writing chapter 3, they're getting multiple rounds of feedback, they're also taking courses, right? Now, a lot of that is done within the structure of the courses, but it is still, there's a lot of deadlines and timelines that they need to hit. But there are also other parts of the program, like I think your second summer, that are relatively light, right? And I think it's an individual thing, and I hesitate to give ballpark numbers. I think that I see students have the sort of the most the most success, but where students tend to be successful right out the gate is when they are able to organize and manage their time and develop a routine. So they say, hey, I'm going to work every morning from 5 to 6:30 p.m. a.m. Sorry. I'm going to read and I'm going to maybe do some writing. I'm going to do those things. And then on the weekend, I'm going to try to save a couple hours to do other tasks, right? So I think that sort of time management is really helpful for students. I know I'm kind of talking around your question. Dr. Hatcher has a from experience comment there in the chat. So he says that he spent about 2 to 3 weeknights and at least one full day on the weekend every week. And I think, again, this depends on your level of engagement with the reading, with the course material. I, for example, assign required readings every week. It's often not a lot, right? It might be a couple chapters in a book. And then I also assign a number of supplemental articles for students. And I say, hey, read this if you can. If we're talking about methods, like it'd really be great if you could read this article on sampling or on data analysis, right? But I don't expect students to get to all of those supplemental readings, right? So Heather, does that answer your question along with Dr. Hatcher's comment?
Yes, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions from the group?
I do have one that's kind of more like a fun, less serious one.
Okay.
I guess my question is in terms of people changing or fixing their dissertation topic. I guess my question is what's the max amount of times a student has come to you or you've seen like a student's dissertation evolve or completely change from when they applied for the program to actually when they graduated?
That's a good question. So first off, I'll say that we don't hold you to whatever you write in your problem statement, or excuse me, in your statement of purpose. You don't enter and we say, well, Ebo, you said you were going to do this and you've got to do that, right? Like what we're really trying to get through with that statement of purpose is that you've given it some thought, right? Like we can see some ideas there. We can see maybe some evidence of your academic writing ability, right? But we don't say, hey, this is what you wrote in your statement of purpose. This is what you're doing for the next 3 years. I would say that students' ideas and topics evolve pretty rapidly and pretty frequently during the first 2 semesters in the program. Now, we do have the diagnostic exam during your first fall. And so we do expect you to have a sort of a mini proposal there for what you want to conduct your dissertation research on. However, we do see students who pass their diagnostic exam and wholesale change their topic, right? I don't say it happens regularly, but it does happen, right? More frequent is students who sort of modify or slightly shift focus or maybe methods or design over the course of the program. But, it's really possible to sort of change your topic, I think, really up until sort of the middle of your first spring. So I think, you really have like 6 to 8 months to really kind of land on where you want to be. And even then, we've had students change into their second year, middle of their second year, sort of make radical changes to their topic. The thing is, it gets more difficult as you go along because of the embedded nature of the assignments, right? Because you're writing chapters 1, 2, and 3 in coursework. So, if you sort of say, I'm going to do topic X, and now you're doing topic M that's not in the same universe, right? Then you have all this work that you've been building up over the course of however long that you now need to rewrite and re-research. So does that answer your question, Evo?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. Other questions from the group?
I have one more question,
Sure,
just
go
for
ahead.
confirmation. So just to confirm that the deadline for the summer cohort is February 1st.
Correct.
Okay.
Heather, did you have a follow-up to that?
Nope, that was it.
Okay.
I in the application portal, it shows a January 15th.
That was our old deadline.
Okay.
And thank you for letting me know that. I need to make a note of that because I wonder if they did not update that in the application portal. I need to find a pen. I should make note of this on my notes. Okay, so no, it is February 1st, regardless of what it says in the application portal.
Okay.
I will double check with them tomorrow to make sure that that is updated in the application portal. Thank you for letting me know that. I would not have known.
Sure, thank you.
Okay. I have a few more minutes here, everyone. So if you have additional questions for Dr. Claussen Pitts and I, or Dr. Hatcher, Dr. Hatcher, thank you for joining us. I'll stick around. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.